Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for this presentation. We really appreciate you taking the time out. And I've been working with WP Rocket for over 5 years, and WP Rocket itself has been around for over 12 years, and it's installed on over 5 million websites to this point. This experience gives us a lot of insight into reasons why pages can be loading more slowly than they should be. And it also means that we've developed a lot of tips and techniques as far as getting those pages to load faster. Today, I'm here to share with you a lot of those techniques that we've developed over time, and I'll also be going over some real-world examples showing the kinds of improvements that you can see in the page speed tests. Just a quick note before we get into all of that. The links in the slides that I'll be showing will be available after the presentation for you. I'm going to try to be going over as much information as I can. So if you miss anything or need to check anything later, everything will be available to you later on. And before we get into specific techniques, I think it's important that we show proof about why improving page speed is so important. And so on this slide, I've got a lot of studies listed that show how a lot of major companies have found really great improvements in their conversion rates after they have taken time and put in work to boost their website's speed. And also on this slide, I also have a study showing how bounce rates can be decreased to a large degree after increasing page speed. If you have a lot of people leaving your site in frustration, it's less likely that they're going to come back, and then you want to avoid that at all costs. Additionally, I've got an article here talking about how the consensus is among most SEO experts that boosting your page speed can help with your search engine ranking, at least to some degree. So the links and slide are here for you if you'd like to kind of check those and get into more of the details. But I just wanted to briefly start by showing that there's tangible proof showing that why doing these sorts of things, putting the time in to increase your site's website speed really can provide a lot of benefit to you. To start, we'll get into some specific page speed testing tools that you can use as far as finding out what the issues might be with some of your web pages. The first one here is gtmetrics.com. They have a free plan, and it offers the ability to run customizable tests. You can change options, like you can run tests from various locations. You can apply different network speeds, apply custom cookies, and a lot more too. So you can just sort of customize the test based on what your needs are. They also have paid plans, and they offer even more customizable options, like more locations. You can change the device, you can change screen resolutions. And the paid plan also offers data retention, so you can run tests and you can see how the tests might be changing for the positive or the negative over time. And the paid plans also offer the ability to run bulk tests, and that can be really helpful if you have a lot of pages that you need to test, and that can save you a lot of time. Next one to talk about is PageSpeed Insights. I'm sure a lot of you may already be familiar with this. When you run a test here, the tests give you the results for a mobile and a desktop page view. One thing to mention with PageSpeed Insights is that it primarily uses your location to decide what server they use to run the test. So there can be an issue, like if you're creating or working on a site that is in a different part of the world. If you run a test from your location, you may be running a test from a server that's far away from where the website visitors may actually be coming from. So if this is the case, if you suspect that this might be the case, you can use a VPN and try to connect from a location that's close to where the web page visitors are going to be coming from. And usually you'll get a more accurate test from doing that. Additionally, with this tool, you can't really customize the conditions. Like you can't change the device, you can't change network speeds, that sort of thing. So that's another factor to consider when you're making a choice as far as what tool you would prefer to use. Last tool that we'll talk about, and a lot of people really enjoy this test as well, is called webpagetest.org. They also have free and paid plans, and the tests are also customizable. And with the paid plan, you get even more options. The tool that you prefer to use can depend on your own personal preference to some degree, but it can also be good to run tests from multiple different tools. Usually they'll give you similar results, but sometimes that's not always the case. So from time to time, it can be good to run tests from multiple tools as well. And so when viewing the page speed test results, when you run a test, it's important to note that you'll get two different kinds of data back from the tests. The first type is lab data. And this is data that's generated from a tool called Lighthouse. And this supplies simulated page views with simulated conditions, such as the device, the network speed, CPU power, basically it's a it's a test to simulate what a real world page view might be like from someone using various devices. Field data, on the other hand, is real user data, and it's taken from any web page visit to your site from Chrome mobile or desktop, and it's saved in the Chrome User Experience Report, or CRUX for short. And the data that's displayed here in the field data, it's over a 28-day period. It is the average scores over that period of time. And on this slide, we can see sort of the difference between these two types of data. On the left-hand side, we have the field data. On the right-hand side, we have the lab data. The field data may not always be available. You do have to get enough traffic to your website in order to qualify to have this sort of data reported. I don't know the specific number, but I've heard that it may be in the range of 5,000 page views per day, and that's per page. That's not per site. I don't know that number for sure, but that's what I've heard. I do know that it requires quite a bit of traffic before you'll see this kind of data reported in your page speed tests. And because it's based on a 28-day period, any changes that you make to your site and, applying some of the techniques that we'll be talking about, you won't see immediate improvements here. It basically will take, basically the course of a month to sort of update these numbers. So when we're applying the changes that we're going to be talking about, we'll mainly focus on the lab data on the right-hand side here. And if you see improvements in these numbers, then generally speaking, over the course of a month, you should see improvements in the field data as well. So now we'll get into the core web vitals. These are the main metrics that page speed testing tools use to measure your site. And the three metrics that make up the core web vitals, or CWV for short, are the first one is largest contentful paint. That is LCP for short, and this measures the loading speed of a site. The second metric is cumulative layout shift, or CLS for short. That measures the visual stability of a site. And interaction to next paint, or INP for short, that measures the site interactivity and how responsive a page is to the interactions that you do while you're viewing the page. And all three of these metrics must be passed with a score of good in order to pass the overall core web vitals assessment. We're going to get into more details about each, but just for now, know that you need to pass them all. Largest contentful paint, LCP. This is a measure of how fast the above the fold content of a web page loads. And for anyone who's not familiar, above the fold means the content that's immediately viewable on the page as soon as you're first loading the page. And you want an LCP score that is 2.5 seconds or faster in order to pass this specific metric with a score of good. And page speed testing tools analyze a page, each of your pages, and they determine what is the most important element above the fold, and they'll call that the LCP element. And the LCP score is a measure of how long it takes that specific element to load into view. And LCP elements can be based on image or text-based HTML elements, and they can also be different for the same page for the desktop and mobile page views. About improving LCP scores, there are some general suggestions that we have and that we mentioned. If possible, it's best if you can avoid creating really huge pages with a lot of content on it. I know that that's maybe not always possible, but if it is possible, it's better to break content up into smaller pages. Even with optimizations applied, if a page has a lot of content on it, it can be hard to really maximize the page speed for it. The LCP element, it should be added directly within the HTML page source rather than being inserted into the page via JavaScript. When it's present there in the HTML, you're just starting off on the right foot as far as it just generally speaking will always load quicker if it's already there in the HTML page source. We also advise that you make good choices about themes and plugins that you use. I've included a link here in this slide where we have recommendations as far as how you can judge themes and plugins in that regard. And generally speaking, it's to avoid themes and plugins that have extra features that maybe your site won't even use, and also just to use ones that use smaller, more efficient scripts wherever possible. One of the first things to talk about as far as improving the LCP score is to use page caching. A non-cached WordPress page view, it requires a lot of database and PHP code processing for every page view. And at the end of all of that processing, you end up with the same HTML page each time. So it's best if you can just cut all that processing out and just save the end result as a static HTML file. And then for each page view, you just serve that static HTML file that's already ready to go, and it makes things a lot faster. And browsers can also locally save copies of both full HTML pages and images, CSS files, and JavaScript files. The reason why this is done is because it's a lot faster if the browser just saves copies of these for if the page is refreshed, or if you view other pages on the same site that use the same JavaScript or CSS files. It's a lot faster to just use a version of those files that's saved within the browser, rather than requesting them from the website's server every time. And servers can instruct browsers for how long those files should be saved. And we call that the TTL, or time to live. And I've got a link to a document here in this slide, and it outlines how you can configure all of this correctly. If you are interested, or if you do use WP Rocket, it can automatically configure all of this for you. Moving on, it's also really helpful to use gzip compression on the cached files too. This decreases the size of the cache files so that it just takes shorter for the browser to download the cache files and to use them to display the web pages. The specific way that you would apply this depends on the type of server that you're using, Apache, Nginx, etc. But I've linked to a guide here that outlines exactly how you can do all of that yourself. WP Rocket does also automate the creation of the gzip files, and it also applies all the rules so everything works correctly, just kind of out of the box. Another thing that we do recommend is to defer the loading of your JavaScript, and that can be done by adding a defer attribute to your JavaScript scripts. Adding the defer attribute allows the scripts to load at the same time while the rest of the HTML is being parsed and displayed on the page as well. If there's no defer attribute there, then that HTML parsing and content display gets interrupted until the scripts are fully loaded and executed. So it's just it's not as good of an experience for the web page visitor. If you'd like that to have this automated, WP Rocket does have an option called Load JavaScript Deferred, and it can apply this to any scripts that don't already have the defer attribute applied. Going beyond deferring JavaScript, you can also delay the loading and execution of all JavaScript until there's a user interaction with the page in some way, be it moving the mouse or clicking or scrolling. When you do this, it allows the visual aspects of a page to load a lot faster, and it just generally makes for a snappier feeling page load. And then once the user does interact with the page, all of the scripts can be loaded and executed sort of in the background, and a lot of times they won't even notice that that's happening. Applying this kind of optimization generally does require some custom development, whether you can do that or hire someone to do it for you. WP Rocket, if you use it, it also has an option called Delay JavaScript Execution, and it can apply all of this for you automatically as well. We advise that you apply some optimizations to your CSS as well. First one would be to minimize the CSS to reduce the download size. Also, any CSS that's not actually being used on each of your pages should be removed. When you're using themes and plugins, sometimes they'll add CSS that's only used on some pages maybe, or not used at all. And so any of that that's happening, you should try to remove that whenever possible. CSS should also be made not render blocking, and the way that we suggest you do that is to take any CSS that's being applied via external CSS files, combine it all, and apply it within a style element inline in the in the HTML of each page. And tools can be used to do these things manually, but WP Rocket can also apply these optimizations for you as well. A side benefit of using a plugin like WP Rocket with this is that if you make any changes to the content of your page or the styling, and the cache and the CSS kind of needs to be cleared, it can do this automatically, and that way the changes that you make can show up immediately, and the optimizations can be reapplied as well. It's a good idea to optimize the font format that you're using if you're using external Google fonts. So for example, any fonts that might be using the TrueType format or OpenType format, they're a little bit older, those should likely be converted to WOF2 format, and WOF stands for Web Open Font Format. When you do this kind of conversion, you can expect typically a 30% to 60% reduction in the file size of the font. And so you get the same font to be used on your site, and it just loads a lot faster. And in this slide, I've included links to a couple tools that you can use to do this kind of conversion. Optimizing the way Google Fonts are hosted can also help with the LCP score as well. You know, it's a really good idea to host fonts on your site server rather, in order to reduce any as much external requests to external servers as possible. Google Fonts has the option to download fonts, and you can do that manually, and you can upload them to your server, and then configure everything that way. If that's not possible for you, or if you prefer it to have it automated, WP Rocket has a self-host Google Fonts option that can do this all for you as well. And it's generally a good idea to preload fonts that are used in content above the fold. May not always be the case, but generally speaking, it's a good idea. Fonts can be preloaded as shown in the example here in this slide. We use a link element, and you apply the rel equals preload attribute and value. You also apply as equals font, and that tells the browser what kind of file is being preloaded. You use the href attribute to point to where the font is located, and there's also an optional cross-origin attribute that you can apply as well. And this is only required if the font is located on an external server. If you'd prefer, WP Rocket has a preload fonts option that can do all of this automatically for you as well. When the LCP element is an image, it should almost surely be preloaded so that the browser loads it very, very early on in the process of the full page load. It can make sense to also preload other above the fold elements as well, images as well. But it's best to kind of test that out and see what gives you the best page speed results. And preloading images works very similarly to how we showed that you preload fonts. Just a few differences. You use as equals image instead, and there's also another attribute that we apply called fetch priority equals high, and that just tells the browser to download it with the highest priority. And you definitely want to make sure that no images that appear above the fold, or any images that are visible right away when the page loads, you don't want to have lazy loading applied to those, as that can delay their display to some degree. And it's also a good idea to apply lazy loading to images that are located anywhere below the fold outside of view. And this way, the less processing to display the page that's going on below the fold, the more that a browser can focus on the above the fold content, and specifically the LCP element. And that can work to increase your LCP score as well. WP Rocket does have a critical images optimization that can automate a lot of this. It analyzes the mobile and desktop versions of each of your pages and applies this automatically to the relevant images. Just a quick note about preloading assets. I've suggested preloading, both fonts and images. But I should note that preloading too many assets can actually reduce the effectiveness and even kind of completely nullify the benefits of preloading. If you're trying to preload too many files, it's almost the same as if nothing's being preloaded at all, because basically there's still too many things trying to be loaded at the same time. And so the main point to take away is that you want to focus on the preloading the most important files, and just kind of test different combinations out. And I should mention that the order matters as well. So whichever preloading link appears first in the HTML, that's the item that the file that will be preloaded first. So like I mentioned, if it's an image that's the LCP element, it's almost guaranteed that you want to preload that, and then kind of test different combinations of preloading other above the fold images, and maybe if you're using Google Fonts, preloading those as well. But just test all different combinations and see which one gives you the best results. Compressing images is also a very important aspect of improving LCP scores. For any that's not familiar, compressing images means reducing their file size while not affecting the visual quality of the images, or minimally affecting the visual quality. It's also recommended to create WebP and AVIF versions of the images as well, because those usually offer even smaller file sizes with the same image quality. There's a variety of tools that can be used to do this. We have one called Imagify that we think works great, but there's a lot of options for you to choose from. Equally as important, your site should give browsers the choice of many different sizes of the same image to choose from, uh, depending on the size of the window of the page view that's happening. Like for instance, so if you have a desktop page view and you might have a full-sized image that's 2500 pixels wide, if on the desktop view that image is displayed at full width, then it makes sense to use to serve the full-sized image in that case. But if you have a mobile screen and the image might be only displayed at 300 pixels wide, then it makes sense for there to be multiple versions of the image that the browser can choose from. And for mobile versions, it would make more sense to choose a smaller version of the image, maybe one that's only 300 pixels wide. And the reason is that smaller image will be a lot smaller file size and will load a lot faster for the mobile versions, of the page load. So in this slide, I have just an example code that shows one of the ways where you can offer the browser many choices to choose from, depending on the size of the window that's being used. Optimizing the loading of pages HTML is also very important too. And this is done using a fairly newer CSS property. It's content visibility, and you set it to a value of auto. I've got a link here for more information that you can do as far as that goes. But it's very similar to lazy loading for images, but it's applied to all HTML elements. And when this is applied to HTML elements that are located below the fold and that are not visible when the page first loads, that content won't even be loaded at all. And doing this similarly to lazy loading images, it helps the browser to really focus on just the content that's visible, as soon as the page loads, and it can really help increase the LCP score as well. So it's not recommended to apply this to every single HTML element. If you apply this to too many, then it really kind of overdoes the processing, and it can actually even slow things down. So you want to really apply it more to like large sections of sites. So like a footer is a good example of one that you might, the container element for the footer, or other, sections that appear lower on the page, that those are good candidates to have this sort of optimization applied. If you are interested in this from WP Rocket's end of things, we have automatic lazy rendering optimization, and this analyzes the mobile and desktop versions of each of your pages and automatically applies this to the best elements to optimize this as well. A couple other metrics that are worth mentioning that you'll see reported in the page speed tests: initial server response time and time to first byte, or TTFB for short. These are measures of how responsive the server is when the page is first requested. And you want these values to be as close as possible to 0. And the reason being is because the server response times, these are also included in the LCP metrics, because the LCP can't even start loading until the server starts responding. And so one of the ways that you can help to reduce the server response times is to choose hosting that is geographically located close to where most of the website visitors will be coming from. So for example, if a site has a visitor base that are mostly going to be coming from France, then you would want to choose hosting that has servers located there in France as well. If a website is serving customers around the world, then that's when a content delivery network can come into play. And for anybody who's not familiar with a content delivery network or CDN, they basically mirror your website to multiple servers all around the globe. And when your site gets a visit, it will match up the closest one of their servers with where that visit is coming from. And that just optimizes the server response times as well as possible. Yeah. So moving on to some specific examples, here's one showing the improvements that can be possible when it comes to a text-based LCP element. Here we see that it's getting a poor LCP score of 3.5 seconds. As we recall, the passing time is 2.5 seconds or less. This text content had a Google font applied, and so that Google font needed to be preloaded. Once we applied the preload, then we see that on the subsequent test, the LCP score went all the way down to 2.4 seconds. And we also saw improvement with the other metrics as well. Here's an example showing what you can do with the LCP score when it is specifically for an image. If you click into the largest contentful paint section of the test results, you'll see that it sort of breaks it down into 4 different phases of loading time. And typically when an image needs to be preloaded, you'll see that the loading delay specifically will be very long, much longer than it should be. And here we see that it's over 4 seconds, and that's causing the overall LCP time to be 5.2 seconds. After the image was preloaded, then we can see here in the next test that we ran, the load delay went all the way down to 0, and the LCP score was greatly improved all the way down to 2.0 seconds. And improving this also improves the other metrics as well. And here's one more example regarding LCP, but this is specifically as it relates to videos. Generally speaking, it's not overly advisable to use videos in places on the page, high up, where they might be picked as the LCP element. Generally, they have larger file sizes, and they also usually have scripts that are loaded and executed too, even before you play the video. And that can really, really slow the loading of the page down and the LCP score specifically as well. Here in this slide, we see that that's the case with this page. It's getting a very poor LCP score of 11.3 seconds. A method that we have, come up with to sort of really improve things with video embeds is to replace the videos with an image for the initial page load. And the image is styled to look exactly like the video embed. So maybe you might put the YouTube logo over it to make it look just like it does when it's actually the video embed. So we do this to make sure, or to try to make the users not notice that in most cases. And because we're changing this to a video, that means, or I'm sorry, an image, that means that the image can also be preloaded. And so when we do all this, we can see that the LCP score goes all the way down to 1.9 seconds. And so what you do is you apply a custom script so that when the image is clicked, it pulls the image out of the page and inserts the video into the page in the same location, and causes it to play as well. So you can do this with custom web development. WP Rocket also has an option called Replace YouTube iframes, and it can do this for you as well. Moving on to cumulative layout shift, or CLS for short. This is a measure of how much unexpected element shifting that happens during a page load. Here in this slide, we can see that initially the elements are side by side when the page starts loading, and then as the page load continues, maybe more content is loaded into the elements, and that causes them to grow and shift. And this kind of shifting generally makes for a bad user experience, so you want to try to avoid it as much as possible. Just a quick note, expected shifts that happen from like user interactions like clicking or hovering, those aren't counted as part of this. It's just, these are things that happen without the user doing anything. You want to avoid those kind of shifts whenever possible. A CLS score must be 0.1 or less in order to pass this aspect of the Core Web Vitals. And shifts count for the entire duration of the page view. So it's not just the initial page view. If someone scrolls down lower to lower content in the page, and there's more shifting that happens when the scroll happens, then that CLS is also added to the total overall CLS as well. So many of the techniques that we already talked about that improve LCP also work to improve CLS, but now we'll go over some specific techniques you can use to help with CLS. And when it comes to images, the main thing that you can do is to apply width and height attributes to the image elements. And the values for those attributes should be the intrinsic width and height of the images. And the reason why this is important, because this allows the browser to quickly calculate and know the area that's going to need to be reserved for the display of those images on your web page. So even though the image might not be there until it's fully loaded, it still reserves the amount of space needed. And that way the other content that's loading quicker can load around it. And then once the image images are fully downloaded, then they'll just appear in that space. If these attributes are not there, then the images would be much smaller. And then once they're fully downloaded, then you would see an expansion happen and content that's around it would shift. And all of that will definitely add to your CLS score. And these are things that you want to avoid if possible. Kind of similarly to that is content that is inserted dynamically via JavaScript into your page. This is technically things like ads or content that you have to fetch with Ajax from external sources. It can take time for that to fully be downloaded and loaded and displayed. So, typically what can happen is, again, the related HTML elements would be smaller. Once the content is fetched and displayed on the site, then that causes it to expand and you get the shifting as well, and that adds to your CLS score. This aspect of CLS is kind of tough to optimize because really it's not always possible for you to predict ahead of time how much space is going to be needed for content that you're going out and fetching. But what you can do is you can try to estimate as best as possible the space that might be needed. So if you at least save some space for it, maybe when the content is loaded in, there still would be some shifting. But if the amount of shifting is less than otherwise, then your CLS score would still be lowered. If CLS is related to text-based elements, it can often be due to the usage of Google fonts. The default behavior for any text on your pages that are using Google Fonts is for it to be invisible until the Google font is fully downloaded. And this is called a flash of invisible text. It's something you definitely really want to avoid. It's not a good experience at all for your site visitors. If you apply a CSS style of font display swap to the elements that are using Google Fonts, that allows a fallback font to be used until the Google font is fully downloaded. And that's a much better experience for the user. For anyone who's not familiar, like a fallback font is, one of the basic fonts that all browsers have ahead of time, like Arial, Georgia, those sorts of fonts. And when you do this, you still could get what's called a flash of unstyled text. And so basically that'll be, initially you'll have the fallback font displayed, and then once the Google font is downloaded, it'll kind of change to the Google font. And in order to minimize this, the fallback font that you pick, you want to try to make it as close in size and space that it takes up to the Google font that will ultimately be applied. Sometimes it's not always possible to get an exact match, but I've added a link here in this slide that you can check into if you'd like. Basically, it's sort of an advanced technique where you can apply some CSS properties that can adjust the fallback font's display so that it even more closely matches the Google font that you're using. Moving on to some specific examples here, we see one involving images that don't have the width and height attributes applied as we recommend. And without them, we see a very poor CLS score of 0.314. After we applied the width and height elements to this page, we got the CLS score all the way down to 0. And as far as text-based ones involving Google Fonts, here similarly, we have a poor LCP score. And once we applied the font display swap to the elements, then we got the CLS all the way down to 0 as well here. And you see the other metrics improving as well. Moving on to the interaction to next paint. This is a measure of how responsive a page is to user interactions. And just so you know, user interactions include things like clicks, taps, or key presses of the keyboard. Scrolling is not counted as a user interaction. And an IMP score of 200 milliseconds or faster is what's required to get a passing grade here. IMP value is the single longest user interaction. It's not the accumulation of all of the interactions combined. So even if you have a page that is pretty well optimized in this regard, if you have even just one user interaction that is kind of slow, that can sort of tank your IMP score. So it's important that you fully optimize, all of the ways that users can interact with your page. The IMP metric is a field metric. So like as I mentioned before, the field metrics won't always be available in the page speed testing tools. So when that is the case, you can use the Chrome Developers tool, and specifically you can go into the Performance tab, and within that tab you'll see the option to change things like the CPU speed and the network speed. And you can do this to sort of try to simulate what typical page views, like mobile page views, might be like for the kinds of visitors that you expect to come to your website. And so once you have those settings in place, you can load the page and start interacting with it just in the same way that your users might interact with the page. And you'll see that each time you interact, that interaction will be listed, and the full time that it took to complete that interaction is listed as well. The single longest interaction is the one that will be marked as the IMP. And so if you find one or more interactions that are typically taking a very long time, that's how you know that that's sort of the areas that you would need to focus on as far as optimizing. And a large portion of improvements to IMP will likely be related to optimizing JavaScript code and CSS animations. And that sort of thing is kind of beyond the scope of a presentation like this. But you can use the method that I just talked about as far as, finding the problem areas within the Google Web Developer Tools and the Performance tab. And that can help you know where you might need to apply some custom web development, or you can sort of check on the themes or the plugins that may be related to those interactions, and maybe you can look for different options that might work better for you. I've also included a link here in this slide. It's a page where we have some specific recommendations as far as applying optimal JavaScript code, and how that can help you with your INP score as well. Also have some considerations to mention just beyond what you might see in page speed testing results. And a lot of times page views will not be served from cache. In the case of WP Rocket, for example, we exclude some pages from being cached, like the checkout page and the cart page. And the reason why we do that is for compatibility and security reasons. Those sorts of pages often have sensitive information that really shouldn't be saved in a publicly saved cache file. Additionally, anytime you update the content of a page, or if you change the styling of your site, the cache may need to be cleared. And so when that happens, the first page views to each of the pages would be uncached. And so for those reasons, it's also a really good idea to just make sure that you're optimizing the uncached page views as well. And one of the main ways that you can do that is by using something called persistent object caching. There's a couple of main ones to mention when it comes to that: Redis and memcached. As far as the specific details, I've got links here to documents that go over sort of the details of how you can apply that. Another thing to mention is to maybe consider using Cloudflare or something similar that can apply firewalls and other security, settings to your website that can protect you from, DDoS attacks and that sort of thing. Things that can slow your website down, even for temporary periods of time. Remember that the Chrome user experience data, in the field data, it's being recorded for all Chrome-based page views. So if even if your site is having temporary periods of slowness, that can be affected in your core web vitals even temporarily, and so you want to avoid that if at all possible. And similarly, you can use things like managed VPS to make sure that you're not affected by other people on a shared server. And also using a hosting plan that scales automatically with traffic can also avoid network slowdowns. If you have unexpected jumps in traffic, you want to avoid any kind of slowdowns related to that. And one final thing that I would mention is it's a good idea to take steps periodically to maintain the general health of your WordPress site. There's another really great video on hosting.com's YouTube channel that I watched recently. It's called WordPress Site Health, and it was with Ryan Sullivan. And he goes over a lot of really great suggestions for keeping your WordPress site healthy and well functioning. And I think that's pretty vital to do as well. So the link to that is added here in the slide. You can take a look at that as well. One final thing to mention, in case anyone's not aware, WP Rocket is now available within your hosting.com account if you do have one. As I, sort of talked about, a lot of these things can be done manually, but it's also just pretty convenient if you use an optimization plugin and it can, automate a lot of this for you. And when you make changes to your site, it can, update uh, those a lot quicker as well. And so you don't have to use WP Rocket necessarily, but I do recommend some sort of optimization plugin. But we think WP Rocket is the best combination of as far as providing results, and we also try to make it the simplest plugin to use as well. So we try to make it as much of it work, out of the box as possible, and we're always working to get, improve that even more, make it simpler and simpler to use. So that is the end of my presentation, and thank you all once again for listening. I really appreciate you taking the time. I hope that you got some useful information here, and with that, I'll turn it back over to Corey, and we'll be open for questions if you have any.
Joe, thank you so much. That's a crash course, a lot in how to speed up your WordPress website. And thank you so much. You walked through some. I've heard those concepts for a while now, and I think it took me deeper into understanding what and why. And then at the end, going, okay, where's the easy button?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's WP Rocket for sure. And we love our partnership with WPRocket@hosting.com. So while you're posting questions to the Q&A button right below here on the Zoom bar, please do that. There's a number of those sitting in there. I put some links into the chat for you to look. This webinar by Joe, great work today, Joe, sharing such a critical subject we're all interested in. There's more like this coming on every month. So there's some links in there. Go check it out. Thank you for sharing the YouTube channel with Ryan's webinar. There's a bunch of these in the back catalog. And this one you've been asking is the same thing. It'll be recorded. It'll be posted to our YouTube channel and sent to you by the email that you register for this webinar today. Go check that out. And as we've been talking, I hope you post some more questions for Joe. I know he's ready to eat those questions in. The question I wanted to ask, though, before we get into these deeper ones, Joe, is
Sure.
If you look back, all the things you've just presented, what are the 2 or 3 important things you'd want to say kind of in summary?
Yeah, I would the two most probably impactful ones are the delaying of the JavaScript. That provides big differences that we see in the page speed test results. Definitely noticeable there, and also the removing the unused CSS, making CSS not render blocking, and removing all of the unnecessary CSS that's not used on each of your pages. I think those are the two probably main biggest benefits.
Excellent. And you said this at the beginning, but for everybody again, when someone's coming to your website, they found you through SEO, Google, or some other ways, or connected in through social, and they arrive on your site, you want them to get to your content, the key things, as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Things just shared over the last 40 minutes or so, critical ways to do that. And it's definitely a craft, Joe. Okay. I'm looking through the questions here. Charlie asks, what's the best approach or practice for delivering responsive background images?
Responsive background images. So you can preload those as well. I think there's a method that you can use to offer multiple choices for the browser based on the screen width. You can use media queries for that. As far as the specific code, I'd have to check into that closer for you, but I could give you a more detailed answer for that.
So I know, like, you touched on images and stuff, and I know images are a big part of that. They can really hog down the data and speed of the site and stuff. But there was one on there too, and Anna kind of followed up, and we can follow up later. Are you supposed to add width and height even for responsive images?
Yes, you do. And the specific way that you can do that is within like the source set attributes as well. That sort of gets into technical things. I would want to check on that before, so I don't tell you anything incorrectly. But yeah, you can tell the browser as far as what the intrinsic widths are for each of the versions of the images. Yes.
Okay. Taj asked, and I know we've been talking about front end content, how the website loads to the browser of the guest. This one might be adjacent, but you let me know if this is off. But I've been told that more plugins that you have in WordPress, the slower it is. Is that true?
To a degree. So you could have 100 plugins that only do one thing, one simple thing, and maybe that wouldn't be an issue. It really does depend on what the plugins are doing and how much processing, how much PHP and database processing they're doing. So really, it's a case by case, issue.
Yeah, and Adam, kind of on kind of that thread there is, why do all WordPress calendaring events plugins slow down sites? And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
understand the issue. There's a lot of stuff that's being needed to be presented in the back end
yeah.
to the front end. And so are there any good options out there? Because most of the popular ones are all slowed down, flagged as slowing down sites. I know this is a continuing issue. I know you all at WP Rocket probably deal with, but any thoughts on overall, suggestions on plugins and site speed connected to site speed you might share?
I don't know if I have any like specific ones to suggest, but yeah, I mean that is definitely an issue that we do notice with learning and educational plugins. A lot of times those pages don't work well with caching and they need to be excluded. So sometimes in those cases, we exclude the cache and we only apply the optimizations. So I don't know that I have any specific recommendations. Just to, if you are using WP Rocket, you can contact us when you're having issues, and we definitely work with each individual case to try to, maximize everything that can be done as far as optimizing those pages.
I do know, and maybe you can resonate or add to this, Joe, but if you're not using a plugin, you know, get it off, deactivate and delete it.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, a general rule of thumb is, and obviously you, Adam, and others have checked around for different plugins, but go with the known kind of sources,
Mm.
especially for these bigger ones. I was just talking to friends over at Solid WP that run the event calendar plugin, and I know there's a lot of complexity there, but I always defer to the known entities that are known for creating, like WP Rocket and others, great plugins with efficient code. So, there's some plugins you might get that it's doing the one part you mentioned earlier, Joe, like it's supposed to do this one thing, but it's loading on every single page that it's not needed to. That's going to help drag, your site speed down for sure. So there's some thoughts I have. If you have any others you wanted to add?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And from WP Rocket's end of things, the support team, if it's a more used plugin, then we're more likely to have experienced the same issue in the past. If there are, unsolvable issues, or, if we have an open issue on our GitHub repo, those are more likely to be addressed if they're more used, the more commonly used plugins. So for all of those reasons too, yeah, I would also suggest sticking to, the more used ones.
Sure, you had a good question here, and I'm curious because I know you're level 2 support over at WP Rocket. Been doing this for a while now, and you might like this, but anything when we're talking about that, a plugin that's loading on the front end that might be causing slow, are there any tools? Sherry asked, I think this is what she was getting at, but that you know of or you all use to determine, okay, there's this plugin that's loading on the page that we need to kind of go investigate on the back end. Like I know you can view source and check stuff, but there are any tools that kind of help with some of that?
Yeah, if you dig down into the page speed test results, a lot of times you can find like within the waterfall view, like what specific scripts are taking longer to load, and so you can sort of target the main issues that way.
There you go. That's great.
Hmm.
So when you all are looking at those reports, you can kind of go, okay, what is that? There's
Yeah.
probably a slug or something that might identify the plugin or something on the back end. That's excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, you usually from the script name, or in a lot of cases you can tell what the related plugin is.
So Warren asks, Lighthouse tends to use unrealistic old devices and bandwidth speeds determines rankings. Do you know why that is?
I don't have any sort of access to their inner workings. I'm not really sure about that. But that's one of the reasons why I kind of prefer to use GT metrics. For me, you can sort of customize things a lot more, customize different devices, different locations and that sort of thing. So I prefer to use GT metrics personally.
Excellent. And I assume too, if you're in Dow, you gave us several tools to use that you could look at differences and what people are saying to see some commonalities between the services.
Yep.
Mark says you mentioned converting PHP pages to HTML to speed up pages. Would caching everything with Cloudflare accomplish the same thing?
Yeah, caching can be done within Cloudflare as well. There's a lot of things you can use to cache pages. So yeah, I think specifically Cloudflare has Cloudflare Cache Everything, which will do that, and Cloudflare APO as well. That's a paid option. So
I know there's a nuance, and I think you mentioned this earlier. If you got an e-commerce site or something that needs to load, caching can sometimes get in the way. So you want to be careful with that,
mm,
especially if you've got, I would gather, an e-commerce or dynamic content that needs to be loaded from the user.
yeah, definitely. Mhm.
So digging into that, everyone, as you said, the cache everything may not work for every site you might have, depending on what you're doing there.
Mm.
Okay, just looking around. Um, you know, I know WP Rocket, awesome, easy button to help do these things. I know there's the do it by hand where you can try to minimize CMS and things like that, and that's the hard way. What other options out there, Paul asked, that you might do optimizations? I know there's the hand by hand way. There's great products like WP Rocket to help it make it faster, but and you've given us a bunch of tools to see those things, but he mentioned comparing against other potential optimization plugins and pros and cons.
Yeah, so there's free options available as well. Like W3 Total Cache is one that comes to mind. Typically, we think we see better results with paid versions of WP Rocket. And if you've ever looked at the W3 Total Cache settings, it's very customizable.
Daunting.
Lot of options, but it's very complicated. So, if you're looking for something that more just kind of works out of the box, that's when, you might want to go for WP Rocket. But yeah, I mean, certainly there's free options as well that you can use.
Excellent. Think we've got through most of the questions that I've seen. If you have other questions, now's the time. We got a couple more minutes. Thanks again. You've already got some thanks in the chat. This is a great webinar to go back. Slides will be available. I've actually posted them in the chat, but they'll be sent to you after the webinar so you can go through. And that's a reference menu you put together, Joe, of how I, kind of checking through how to increase your site speed. And this is a important subject, especially where we're going into the well, in this hemisphere, the winter holiday kind of cluster, where
Mm,
a lot of your revenue for your clients or yourself are made now.
yeah.
It's a great time. Why we scheduled this with Joe months ago, actually, so you can start working on this with your clients or your own websites to make sure your sites are speedy and snappy and getting the key information to them. Any more questions? I'll give a final call to see. But again, we think WP Rocket, our partnership over there is awesome. You can get WP Rocket through your hosting.com control panel. And it's a great, easy button to take a lot of this heavy lifting of, oh, wait, I've got to figure out how to do this one part.
Mm.
It gave us a lot of things to test that. And to be honing on skills is such a good thing. So it's worth the investment, everybody.
Yeah, of course. We're very thankful for the opportunity to appear as well on this webinar, and yeah, open to any more questions that anybody else might have.
You bet. Hey, I'm going to ask you all a question. So, Joe, I appreciate your depth of knowledge and your breadth of knowledge. Is there any subject that Joe's mentioned that we go, hey, Joe, come back and do it on this? Is there anything you all are interested in learning deeper,
Mm.
dive into the topics he talked about? Because I always love this. We get great guest experts like you, Joe, on. But if there's something else you're interested in, we can say, hey, Joe, you want to come back? Let us know in the chat. Love to hear those.
Yeah, it could be interesting to focus on something specific and go into a lot more detail. Yeah, for sure.
Is there one that comes to your mind, Joe?
Um, maybe
While you're thinking about it, I'm going to respond to a question Paul has here. And sorry, I put you on the spot there. Paul, you asked about the license through hosting.com. Yes. And about multiple licenses. I don't know through hosting.com. I don't know. And I'll get that back. I know you're in our agency success community, Paul. So try to get an answer to that soon and get back to you. But that is a great question. Knowing great agencies here want multiple licenses for the plugins and tools we use. So I will get back to you on that. And I don't know today. for that. Okay, Paul, great follow-up, Paul. For you, I think, Joe, is there any specific customization at WP Rocket that warrants a detailed training of its own?
Um,
And
so
by the way,
I'll,
this is a great question to ask somebody in support because you're like, you answered the same question 100 times sometimes, and you're like, if the user knew this, it'd make it easier for everybody.
yeah, I guess maybe sort of what we talked about with the plugins that maybe are a little bit slower, like the educational plugins, the LMS plugins, or specifically maybe with the additional cache layers that can sometimes present issues, like as far as Cloudflare, that sort of thing. So sometimes that does require a little bit of extra, attention and support. So maybe that's something we could go into in more detail.
Excellent. I love that. We're kind of brainstorming a thought here. Mm, But this the fact that plugins and back-end stuff that may not be used for the front end can cause the site to slower is all a part of optimizing for speed. So that might be a good one we should talk about later, Joe.
Yeah.
Paul, that's awesome. You're talking with Mike Demo later this afternoon, and I'm sorry I don't have the link right now, but Mike Demo is awesome person on our account team. He's a WordPress leader, expert, and knows agencies inside and out. So I'm so glad you're talking to Mike. He's the best person to talk to get some. He understands this weird world of everything from WordPress code, hosting, and then understands what you're trying to do as an agency owner out there. So when I next time I will have this link ready for you. If you're interested as an agency owner and talking to one of our team, particularly Mike Demo and others on Ollie Feldman's team that works with agencies every day, that's what we're here for, to help you potentially save money, get answers to questions that you might need. We know you agency owners need humans that that you can count on. And that's who we want to be here at hosting.com. And I know our partners over at WP Rocket. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I hope you come back. You've got some links there to see at the next webinars, and we'll maybe see if Joe has some time in the next couple of months to come back and do some deeper training. But Joe at WP Rocket, thank you for sharing your experience today to help our agencies with their clients and their work on the web. And we appreciate you.
And of course, thank you as well. And thank you to everybody who stopped in. Appreciate it.
All right. All right. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everybody else. We'll see you next time.
All right. Goodbye.